أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for tuning in and welcome to BIMA's Calming the Hearts of the Helpers webinar, an exclusive spiritual webinar aimed at frontline healthcare workers. My name is Fasih and I'm the director of the BIMA HR team and a chest physician by background. Clearly, these are extremely challenging times for us all. As frontline healthcare workers, we are being exposed to a huge range of challenges that we've almost never experienced before in such volume. Challenges relating to patient care and an overwhelmed NHS system, challenges and worries relating to the health of our families, friends, members in the community, and very valid and serious concerns about our own safety and well-being. The risk of burnout during this calamity is very high. And alongside the available emotional and psychological support, recentering through spirituality becomes even more important. And it is with that in mind, I have the pleasure of introducing someone I have been inspired by and learnt a great deal from over the years, mashallah. Shaykh Shafi Chowdhury is an Imam and faith leader at the City Retreat in Leicester, an outreach and engagement facility. And he also acts as a consultant to the Home Office in the rehabilitation of individuals convicted of terrorism offences. And the format for today, so inshallah, he will spend around 40 minutes speaking, and then the last 20 minutes will be used to address any questions. So you should be able to see a chat box, so please do send in your questions through that chat box. And can I also request that you mute your mics to avoid any interference? So without further ado, I would like to hand over to Shaykh Shafi, and I'd like to thank him for his invaluable time. Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you so much, Dr. Fasih and the rest of the team at BIMA for inviting me to have this privilege to address people who are literally at the front lines. And inshallah, we have 38 people in the room at the moment. I genuinely feel that it's a personal honor to be able to speak to people engaged in such a very important frontline role as yourselves during this global pandemic, the crisis that has beset all of us. I don't need to go into any detail explaining or discussing the severity of this, because you people appreciate it and are acutely aware of it in a way that few others can be. But it's with that in mind, the fact that you are at the coalface, the fact that you are my brothers and sisters in faith who are literally putting your personal well-being on the line, your health on the line. I mean, just literally the other day, we heard that the very first surgeon to lose his life in tackling the coronavirus pandemic in the UK did so, and that was a Muslim surgeon. A few days before that, we heard of another medic who'd lost his life and was the first doctor in the UK to lose his life, and that also was a Muslim. And so we have, but this is an issue that doesn't discriminate. It's one that doesn't know, black from white, Muslim from non, rich from poor, whether it's Prince Charles, whether it's our uncles and aunties within our community, our parents, ourselves. This is the thing that affects all of us. And so with that in mind, I wanted to just share a few thoughts, inshallah. And as I say, it's my honor to be able to have a few moments of your time. The Quran, Allah Jalla wa Ala says, فَذَكِّرْ إِنَّ الذِّكْرَى تَنْفَعُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. Remind, for reminding is always a source of benefit, inshallah, for believers. And so it's with that in mind that I wanted to share just a few thoughts that I'll center around as a starting point, verse 78 of Surah An-Nisa. Allah Jalla wa Ala in the 4th surah of the Quran, in the 78th verse says, أَيْنَمَا تَكُونُوا يُدْرِككُمُ الْمَوْتُ وَلَوْ كُنْتُمْ فِي بُرُوجٍ مُشَيَّدَةٍ. Wheresoever you may be, death will certainly find you, even if you take yourselves to towers built up high and strong. And then Allah says, وَإِن تُصِبْهُمْ حَسَنَةٌ يَقُولُ هَذِهِ مِنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ. People of weak faith and with particular reference in this verse to hypocrites. Whenever any goodness befalls, they say, "This is from God." We're quick to identify often the good with God, which is as it should be. Except the problem is with what follows. Allah says, وَإِن تُصِبْهُمْ سَيِّئَةٌ يَقُولُ هَذِهِ مِنْ عِنْدِكَ. But, O Muhammad, whenever harm befalls them, the weak in faith and the hypocrites will point the finger of blame at you and say, "This is your fault. This is from you." The messenger is told to say, قُلْ كُلٌّ مِّنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ. Say to them, both are from God. فَمَا لِهَؤُلَاءِ الْقَوْمِ لَا يَكَادُونَ يَفْقَهُونَ حَدِيثًا. What is the matter with these people that they are barely capable of comprehending a statement? So the Quran, this verse begins with this very sobering realization. Wherever we place ourselves and whatever protections we take, death is a reality. If COVID-19 and the pandemic that's engulfed our world has brought home anything, it's the fragility of our lives, our own mortality. The fact that, you know, as uh, strongly fortified as modern life is, particularly for people in the West, with our advanced technology and healthcare systems and our social services and the structures by which we protect ourselves and protect our livelihoods, protect our interests, and therefore become complacent, almost oblivious to the fact of our own mortality. Something as imperceptible as a virus can sweep through the planet and bring all of us to a standstill. It drives home, we can take ourselves to towers built up high and strong. But death is an inescapable reality. And then Allah reminds us it's not enough simply to recognize that good comes from God. When good comes our way, people of faith, even if not very strong faith, will recognize, well, that's from Allah, and we'll say Alhamdulillah. But when harm comes our way, we can become apt to fall into a dark place and then look at pointing the finger of blame, whether it's those people who uh, eat all sorts of things in other parts of the world, whether it's X, Y, or Z. Now, there is a place for accountability, and there's learning to be gained, and there's, what we can do to protect ourselves. But fundamentally, and at the core of this, the Quran wants us to recognize, قُلْ كُلٌّ مِّنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ. Recognize nothing occurs ever to you in this life except it comes to you from Allah. It is all from Allah. This too is from Allah. And if it's from Allah, and Allah describes himself as Al-Hakim, the wise, but also Ar-Rahim, the compassionate and kind, and he declares that he doesn't do anything out of uh, folly. He doesn't do anything wastefully or for as a game. He asks us, or he describes people of faith in the Quran as pondering at the creation of heaven and earth, at the cosmos, at the world around us, and the universe within us, and then coming to the realization, يتفكرون في خلق السماوات والأرض سبحانك ما خلقت هذا باطلا. People who ponder deeply, reflect deeply upon the creation of heaven and earth, and then almost unprompted, uh, involuntarily come out with, "Glory to you, O Allah. It is not in vain or without purpose that you created this." So nothing happens in this world that is without purpose. It is made by a powerful, a wise, and a compassionate God for a purpose. And therefore, when we find ourselves in any situation, the good that we readily identify as being from the blessings of Allah, but also adversity, hardship, uh, suffering, and pain, which can put us into a dark place. We need to recognize that that too comes from Allah. And if it comes from Allah, then there is something that our Creator seeks for us through this. People speak about when people fall into hardship, people say, you'll get through this. It's not simply going through that is what matters, but more importantly, perhaps it's growing through. To go through is easy. All you have to do is not bow out before the show's over. But it's growth through what God has sent our way. Now, I'm speaking to people who I'm acutely aware are working, whilst the rest of the nation, the rest of the world, we've been sent to timeout. We're on lockdown. We're at home. We're working from home for the most part. We are not able to go out, and so we're sort of confined, and that poses its own challenges. But there are people like yourselves, medics, doctors, uh, health workers, and frontline people who are leaving your homes and presenting yourselves both to an incredibly stressful environment right now, dealing with life and death situations, dealing with mortality, and you're used to that because you're doctors, but you're dealing with it at a level that's unprecedented, we're told, in peacetime, in modern history. And we're yet to see the peak of this thing. We're yet to see the full scale of the upheaval that we're about to be thrown into. And may Allah Jalla wa ala protect us and give us the fortitude, give us the strength to be able to rise to the occasion. But there's a very large burden that rests on your shoulders, and I'm acutely aware of that. And so, inshallah ta'ala, and inshallah, we'll do this for about 40 minutes. I'm going to try to be um, disciplined and end on time. And if I'm going over by 22, I'd appreciate it if the admin could let me know. But I wanted to share a few thoughts, and starting with that verse, wherever we may be, death is an inescapable reality. As human beings, whatever background, and you can be people whose professional work is tackling life and death issues, as is the case with you. We can be people like myself who conduct funerals in a given day. Sometimes I've done a nikah and then I've had a janazah, and these are realities that we have to face. And yet we can become desensitized to the whole reality of it. Even as you're washing a dead body, it's possible to do that. We see on our news feed, as we're scrolling our social media apps, images of very difficult scenes coming out of um, Syrian refugee camps, the Uyghur community in China, Myanmar, and the Rohingya community, and all of these type of things. We see these situations, and it's easy to to feel overwhelmed by it, and therefore to turn onto the news, turn onto the football, turn onto the sports or the entertainment channels, get busy doing our own things, doing other things, and then something like this comes, and suddenly all of humanity collectively, because for all of the different things that we decide are important to us in life, whether it's communist China, whether it's capitalist Europe, whatever it may be, liberal democratic societies, all of us collectively realize life is precious and life needs to be protected. Allah is the giver of life, and Allah, the breath of God, is the reason that we have life. Allah describes this in the Quran very beautifully in Surah Al-Sajdah, where He says, "Alladhi ahsana kulla shay'in khalaqa." He made beautiful all that He created. وَبَدَأَ خَلْقَ الْإِنسَانِ مِنْ طِينٍ. The origin of man, He started from the earth, from a clay-like substance. ثُمَّ جَعَلَ نَسْلَهُ مِنْ سُلَالَةٍ مِنْ مَاءٍ مَهِينٍ. But then the offspring of Adam, He made from the essence of a lowly fluid. ثم سواه ونفخ فيه من روحه وجعل لكم السمع والأبصار والأفئدة. And then how perfectly did He fashion from this very lowly and insignificant fluid the human being. And He breathes into him of His ruh. Allah describes the soul as His own. He نفخ فيه من روحه. He breathed into man, into woman, into the human being, a soul that he called his own. وَجَعَلَ لَكُمُ السَّمْعَ وَالْأَبْصَارَ وَالْأَفْئِدَةَ, and by virtue of that, by dint of that, he made you hearing, seeing, feeling creatures. قَلِيلًا مَا تَشْكُرُونَ. This is the gift of life, for which Allah says, little though do you give thanks. We take life for granted. We take what life is for granted. Life we take for granted, and so we can waste it on endless box sets and all sorts of other things. But the purpose of life is not just our own personal advancement. It's not just our own material comfort and security. But we were placed here for a purpose. We were placed here, made seeing, hearing, feeling, thinking creatures for a great and noble purpose. And all of these things we can become blindsided to in the rat race of everyday life. And the coronavirus has forced us to put all of that stuff on pause and to begin to reevaluate, to take it to stock again, to take stock once again, and take account of the big principles, the first principles, the things that really matter in life. And this is something that we can either do well or we can do really poorly. Many of you, I'm sure, will have come across some really worrying news articles about how rates of domestic abuse have hit the roof during this period of time, whilst everyone's on lockdown, whilst people are in one another's faces, and how we cope with that. And this is something that I wanted to, inshallah, speak to you about. Whilst you're actually in a unique position in that you're not in lockdown in the way that the rest of us are, you're going to your places of work are essential. You carry an essential, critical role. So you leave your home, you go to hospital, you go to your clinic, you go to where it is you work in order to be able to help people during this time. And in doing that, actually, you're doing you should reflect what a great blessing it is that Allah Jalla wa Ala has showered upon you, because He's the giver of life, and the giver of life values life to the point that He declares life sacred. وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا النَّفْسَ الَّتِي حَرَّمَ اللَّهُ. Do not take a life that God has declared sacred. God has made life sacred. It's the very first thing that the Quran tells us angels express consternation about when Allah declares His plan to make Adam his vicegerent on earth. وَإِذْ قَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً. When your Lord declared to the angels, I am to place upon earth my vicegerent, my deputy, the custodian of earth, man. The angels responded, the very first thing that they said, أَتَجْعَلُ فِيهَا مَنْ يُفْسِدُ فِيهَا وَيَسْفِكُ الدِّمَاءَ. Are you to place therein, on earth, one who will cause mayhem and great harm through the land and cause bloodshed? This was their first anxiety. It wasn't, are you going to place on earth one who will not worship you correctly? And of course, the Tawheed and the true worship of Allah is right there at the very top of our spiritual purposes. But they were concerned with a much more earthly and immediate, more pressing issue. Are these people, are you placing on earth those who are going to shed blood? Because life is sacred. The sanctity of life. Life is precious. It's from Allah. And thus did Allah Azza wa Jal declare the verse that we've all heard many a time. من أجل ذلك كتبنا على بني إسرائيل أنه من قتل نفسا بغير نفس وفساد في الأرض فكأنما قتل الناس جميعا. Allah relates the story of the two sons of Adam, Cain and Abel, Qabil and Habil, the two sons of Adam who fall into a dispute, and Qabil, who's filled with rage and anger and jealousy, strikes dead his brother Habil. So one son of Adam kills the other. And Allah Azza wa Jal relates the story in some detail. And then He says, Min ajli dhalik, for this reason, katabna ala bani Israel, did we prescribe to the Israelites, annahu man qatala nafsan bighayri nafs, that any that takes a life, except where it is for the life of one who is guilty of murder or some great colossal wrongdoing through the land, through which he's guilty of a capital punishment, a capital crime. But with the exception of that, man qatala nafsan فكأنما قتل الناس جميعا. Then it shall be not as though he took a life, but as though he took the life of all of humanity. It's as though he took the life of all of humanity. Notice how Allah predicates this on the tale of two brothers, one of whom kills dead the other. Why should one brother striking dead his own brother, which is all people accept, or all societies and all communities will accept, an enormity to your own blood brother? Why does Allah proceed from that to then making this very general statement? Anyone that takes any life unjustly, it is as though you've taken not one life, as though you've destroyed all of humanity. Why? Because whichever human being it is that another human being is capable of transgressing against, and whatever means through which we justify that, because we're very capable of justifications and otherizing. That person's nothing to do with me because they're of a different faith, because they're of a different ethnicity, because they're of a different socioeconomic standpoint, whatever it may be. They deserve my aggression. They deserve my violence. Whatever creative mechanisms we might employ in order to justify taking the life of another, no human being has ever taken the life of another except he struck down his own brother or sister. You've done exactly the same thing that that happened in the very first instance when one brother struck dead another. So Allah says, and in so doing, it's not one life you've taken, it's you've taken the life of all of humanity. Why? Because it's like you've killed your own humanity. You have exited yourself. You have committed a crime against the humankind. But then the flip side of that, وَمَنْ أَحْيَاهَا. And similarly, anyone that saved a life, فَكَأَنَّمَا أَحْيَا النَّاسَ جَمِيعًا. They didn't save one life. It's like they saved all of humanity. And this is something that I feel humbled to be able to recite these verses in the presence of people whose day job is literally that, the saving of all of humanity through your efforts, as difficult as it is, as exhausting, as emotionally draining, as cumbersome a load, a burden to bear. This is your job. The job that some people go into work and they work at a computer, other people do various other things, and they're all very good and important and worthwhile things, no doubt. Your job is to save lives. And Allah is the giver of life. And you have to remember this. Now, guys, inshallah, the reason you're here is because as well as being medics, and as well as being professionals, and as well as being amazing people in your own right, you are believers. You are servants of Allah. And so there is an added sanctity that you must attach to your work. And that should frame for you the way that you approach this. This isn't just work. Inshallah, it isn't like that for any medic, and we'd hope so. But for a believer in God, this is literally doing the Lord's work, saving lives. Saving a life is to save all of humanity, declare the creator of heaven and earth, declare the creator, the giver of life. And yet, of course, it is very challenging when you have extremely limited resources, when you're inundated, when you're having to make very difficult decisions about who to treat and who to withhold treatment from in order to be able to have the best chance at managing this crisis that's engulfing all of us. All of these are very, very difficult things. And it's very possible then, in the face of that, to feel overwhelmed. And so, inshallah, I wanted to remind you that Allah Azza wa Jal dispatches two of his great prophets, two brothers, Musa and Harun, to go and save the lives of Bani Israel. Not in a medical sense, perhaps, in exactly the same way as you do, but nonetheless to save lives. أرسل معي بني إسرائيل ولا تعذبهم. Set free with me the children of Israel, and don't subject them to further torture. And Allah describes the torture that was being brought to them was literally one of life and death. يُقَتَّلُ أَبْنَاؤُهُمْ or يُقَتِّلُ أَبْنَاءَهُمْ وَيَسْتَحْيِي نِسَاءَهُم. The Pharaoh was involved in genocide, killing the sons of the Israelites and sparing their women in order to keep as servants and concubines and whatever else. Allah Azza wa Jalla, when He dispatches Musa and Harun, two brothers and two messengers, to this great task of saving lives and of engaging the ultimate tyrant of the time, the Pharaoh, He sets them out uh, with what he taught Musa alayhi salam his names. He taught Musa alayhi salam his attributes. Innani an Allah. Before he sets him out, he sends him off. The messenger who's going to save lives needs to know the one who creates lives. I am Allah. La ilaha illa ana fa'budni wa aqim as-salata li dhikri. There is none worthy of worship but me. Establish prayer for my remembrance. Inna sa'ata atiyah. The final hour, that moment towards which all of our lives must end. All of our lives come together at this one point. They all start at have the same starting point. They start with the breath of God in the loins of Adam. Kun fayakun. Say and we all became. Be and we all became. That is the starting point, and they all diverge into these very different and disparate until they come together again at this one point, and that is the sa'a. Inna sa'ata atiyah. The final hour is to come. Akadu ukhfiha. I shall keep it concealed from you. لِتُجْزَى كُلُّ نَفْسٍ بِمَا تَسْعَى. That every soul may be rewarded for its efforts. But the hour, the coming together of a final point when we're all united and assembled and confronted with our lives' efforts, and what we strove for, our life's pursuits. That is a reality. The Quran, Allah says to Musa and Harun at this time, "Inna sa'ata atiyatun akadu ukhfiha litujza kullu nafsin bima tas'a fala yasuddannaka anha man la yu'minu biha." So on no account allow those who have not believed in this to distract you from this great truth. All of your efforts to save lives, to bring good to humanity, to strive for social justice, to strive for a better world, all of this must happen hand in hand with a very sharp and keen awareness that we are headed to God. We are headed back to Allah. And therefore, I need to be the very best version of me that I can be, however difficult the circumstances, however unfair. And when you have limited resources, and when you have and you're in this position because of very deliberate political policies that have been pursued and whatever else, you know, my wife's a doctor. We lived through the whole junior doctor's contract, and there's a great deal there to be angry about. But ultimately, all of that is background noise, because you do what you do primarily because that is something that you take to Allah one day. Let the knowledge of the final hour and the fact that it is to come, as hidden as it may well be, it is one day to befall us all, and we will all be assembled. Let that be what motivates you and pushes you to do the very best you can do, and to not give up, and to seek strength. But then, after this, فَلَا يَصُدَّكَ عَنْهَا مَنْ لَا يُؤْمِنُ بِهَا وَاتَّبَعَ هَوَاهُ فَتَرْدَى. Let not one who has not believed in this, and instead chosen to follow his own vain desires, his own immediate appetites, and therefore plunged himself into ruin, let not such a person distract you from this great reality. Allah then dispatches them, and He dispatches them with one further thing to support them. What is the source of their strength as they go to face such a colossal adversary? Allah says to them, اذهبا بآياتي ولا تنيا في ذكري. Go with my signs and do not fall short in my remembrance. Musa alayhi salam in fact, already, because he was uh, perhaps as a great prophet of Allah, he was afraid of shouldering the burden of going to face the greatest tyrant of the time and all of this, and so he made the du'a, oh Allah, you know, I have a stutter. What my brother Akhi Harun huwa afsahu minni lisanan. My brother Harun is much more eloquent. Why don't you make him a prophet as well? And so Allah Jalla wa'ala makes both of them a prophet. But the prayer that Musa makes is a prayer that we often hear. We often hear the first part. When people begin a lecture, sometimes they begin with this dua, Rabbi shrah li sadri. Lord, expand for me my bosom. What does that mean? The idea of a constricted chest. When you feel under pressure, when you feel stressed, you feel a tightening in the chest. And the opposite of that is when you're at ease, and it's your bosom feels not constricted but rather expansive, and you're in a place of great ease and great comfort. Rabbi shrah li sadri. Lord, remove the stress and anxieties, and let me not be in a state of being overwhelmed by this burden. Let me not find myself falling into succumbing to depression. Ishrah li sadri, expand for me my bosom. Wahlul uqdatan min lisani, and remove the impediment in my tongue, yafqahu qawli, that they may understand carefully, clearly my words. But then he says, وَجَعَلْ لِي وَزِيرًا مِنْ أَهْلِي هَارُونَ أَخِي. But can you also, my Lord, make for me uh, someone to share from my own household, Harun, my brother, in this task? And then Musa alayhi salam offers his very humble but spiritual justification. كَيْ نُسَبِّحَكَ كَثِيرًا وَنَذْكُرَكَ كَثِيرًا. That together, Harun and I, we may glorify your name much. And in this very daunting and overwhelming task that you dispatch us, we may hold fast to your remembrance much. كَيْ نُسَبِّحَكَ كَثِيرًا. Make tasbih of you abundantly. وَنَذْكُرَكَ كَثِيرًا. And find strength in remembering you abundantly. إِنَّكَ كُنْتَ بِنَا بَصِيرًا. For you have been ever watchful over us. And this is the source of strength for a believer. To know that Allah Azza wa Jal never left you alone. And through all of the trials and hardships and difficulties and challenges and the chopping waves of life, you are where you are today because your Lord brought you here. And the path ahead is difficult. It's not going to be plain sailing, and it's going to get an awful lot worse before it gets easier. And you're going to be faced with great challenges, but you will be carried through that because your Lord was ever watchful over you. He saw you and he brought you here. And the challenges that you faced, and at some point they've seemed insurmountable, like huge mountains. He helped you to scale those and overcome those. And today you're faced with a great challenge too. Your Lord is ever watchful, but to be able to channel the strength for that, for being able to face this, la taniya fi dhikri, don't fall short in God's remembrance. And so my advice to my brothers and sisters during this time is find strength in the dhikr of Allah. And literally, you're in a state of ibadah. When you leave your homes in the morning to go and start another 13-hour shift, whatever it may be, or you're on call and you have to literally just have your laptop and your phone on, whatever the case may be. View it as an act of ibadah, and therefore as something that you begin by seeking the help of Allah. Anbiya would start with asking Allah's help in every task. The Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, لِيَسْأَلْ أَحَدُكُمْ رَبَّهُ حَاجَتَهُ كُلَّهَا حَتَّى يَسْأَلَهُ الشِّسْعَ نَعْلِهِ إِذَا انْقَطَعَ. Each of you should turn to your Lord with all of your needs, the Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, even if it's the strap of your shoe when it breaks. I mean, that's like another, raise your hand, oh Allah, the strap of my shoe is broken. Please help me to be able to repair that. It doesn't require that you sit down and make a dua facing the Qibla, but that your heart is never disconnected from the source of strength, from the source of tawfiq. from the one who takes you to your goal, from the one who delivers you to your objectives, without whom there is no ability, no power, no strength or might to accomplish anything, which is why لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله كنز من كنوز الجنة. The Prophet said the phrase, this expression, there is no power nor might except through Allah, is a treasure from the treasure troves of Jannah. It's a treasure from the treasure troves of Jannah. And so begin your day, begin your shifts with a quick dua. Ya Rab, and make the dua of Musa alayhi salam, Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri. I missed that part earlier, apologies. My Lord, expand for me my bosom and remove the constrictedness and the nerves and the daunting task ahead of me. Don't let me balk at facing it. But also wa yassir li amri, and make my task that lies ahead of me manageable for me, make it easy for me, facilitate it for me, grant me ease, grant me barakah, and help me as I seek to help your servants. My Lord, these are your servants, every single one of them. They're not the servants of any other creator that you're going to serve. These are the servants of Allah. Some of them know it, some of them don't know it, but every life is sacred, Allah declared. And so you're going to help a person. The Quran, the Prophet of Allah, a hadith authentically related by Imam Ahmad in his Musnad, said, "Ittaqu da'wat al-mazlumi walau kafiran." Be very afraid of the prayer, as in the curse, or the bad-dua, as Urdu speakers say, of the oppressed, even if it be a disbeliever in God. فَإِنَّهُ لَيْسَ بَيْنَهَا وَبَيْنَ اللَّهِ حِجَابٌ. For there is no screen or veil between the call, the cry of the oppressed and God. That's for one who's abusing the oppressed. What about one who is working to save the distressed? That's what you're doing. And so these are servants of Allah you're going to help. And it's an enormous privilege from Allah that He gave to you the ability to do that. The vast majority of us, we're all terrified of what's going on. We're all really saddened when we hear about the rising death tolls and really anxious about that. But the vast majority, we have no means or ability to do anything. You have been blessed by your Maker to be able to save lives, to help lives, to support people struggling. And so this is the thing that you should seek Allah's tawfiq from. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri. Oh Allah, grant me the strength, inner strength to face this, and externally make it easy for me. وَاحْلُلْ عُقْدَةً مِّن لِسَانِي يَفْقَهُوا قَوْلِي. Whatever impediments lie in my way, remove them that I'm able to accomplish my task. And كَيْ نُسَبِّحَكَ كَثِيرًا وَنَذْكُرَكَ كَثِيرًا. And inspire me through it all to be constant in giving glory to you, making tasbih, and in remembering you, remembering that this is the Lord's work that you are doing. And there you will find your strength, my brothers and sisters. There you will find strength, because some of those lives, for all of your efforts, won't be saved because it is their time. It is their time. As Allah Azza wa Jal said in that verse that I began with, the 78th verse of Surah An-Nisa, قُلْ لَوْ كُنْتُمْ فِي بُرُوجِكُمْ قُلْ أَيْنَمَا تَكُونُوا يُدْرِككُمُ الْمَوْتُ وَلَوْ كُنْتُمْ فِي بُرُوجٍ مُشَيَّدَةٍ. Say, wherever you may be, death will come to you at its due time, even if you take yourself to lofty towers. So death is always in pursuit, but your work is a sacred work, and for it you have to channel spiritual energy, and Allah Azza wa Jalla will bless you. And recognize, there was a companion who lived a very long way away from the masjid of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, but he'd walk for each prayer. He'd walk to the mosque, and then he'd walk back home again. And he was getting old, getting on. He's an older man, and one of the other companions who noticed this said to him, "I notice you're always walking. And it's quite a distance for you. I have a spare property nearer to the masjid. If you like, I don't mind doing some kind of a property swap with you, and you can take yourself to this property which is much nearer to the masjid." And this companion, this is related by Imam al-Bukhari, and Imam Nawawi has it in his Riyadh al-Salihin. And this companion said, "No, I'll stay where I am. For I'm keeping count of these footsteps that I take to Allah's house, and the footsteps also that I take on my return. and I hope for their reward with Allah. I don't want to trade that for anything. For me, this is precious. Those footsteps, it's not just the prayer, it's the footsteps towards prayer. It's righteousness, and everything that leads to righteousness is blessed in the sight of Allah. So every life that you're struggling to help, and its destiny is written with its Lord, but your efforts, every single one of those is something that you need to count with Allah, and not therefore don't become overwhelmed, because He alone has written life and death. الذي خلق الموت والحياة, as He says in the very beginning of Surah Al-Mulk, تبارك الذي بيده الملك. Blessed is God, in His hands is the ultimate sovereignty and dominion, the kingdom of heaven and earth. وهو على كل شيء قدير. Over all things, He alone is all powerful. الذي خلق الموت. He created death, والحياة, and life. ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا. In order to test you, which of you is best in action and deeds. وهو العزيز الغفور. And He is mighty and He is forgiving. So this is a blessing that He has allowed you to play a role in. May Allah bless you. I'm conscious that I've gone sort of 4 minutes over my 20-minute slot. So inshallah, thank you so much for allowing me this opportunity, for joining me for this. And people, I ask you for dua. I ask you. They were the righteous people of the past would all clamor out to see off those who were going for pilgrimage, for Hajj, and say to them, please make dua for me. Umar ibn al-Khattab was headed to Umrah to make his Umrah one time, left Medina al-Munawwara to head off to Mecca to make Umrah, and the Prophet took hold of him by the hand and said, "Udhkurni fi du'aika ya ukhi." Remember me in your dua, O my younger brother. Umar ibn al-Khattab said, the Messenger of God asks me to pray for him. Kalimatun la a'dilu biha dunya. These are words that I wouldn't trade for the whole of the world if someone offered to me. The whole world for these words. No, that my Prophet asked me to pray for him. But the Prophet of Allah taught us to ask those engaged in a righteous and noble pursuit to keep them, to make dua for us. And I ask you genuinely, please remember your brother, remember me, remember my family. My wife currently is stranded in Pakistan because she went to be with her mother who passed away. My mother-in-law passed away last Sunday. And having been able to be there with her mother and attend to her in her final days and then her burial, and my father-in-law and the rest just stuck out there and unable to fly back. Quick personal plug. I raise this only because I'd like you to, if you're able to make a dua for them, but make dua for all of us, because your prayers are very weighty in the sight of God. You're engaged in a great act. Allah bless you all. Allah grant you strength. Allah keep you grounded. And Allah Jalla wa Ala reward you for every single soul, every single life that you touch, both in this world, but also in the hereafter. And there are many of you, because of your ihsan, because of the beauty with which, and the love and the care and the attention to detail, and the genuine concern with which you engage Allah's servants, you can become a source not just for their physical healing, but also perhaps also for their spiritual healing. And that is truly the greatest of triumphs. May Allah write that for you all. Jazakumullah khairan. So I'm going to stop now, inshallah. I don't know if we have any questions, but if we do, I'd be very happy to, or um, suggestions or reflections and things that attendees who are present would like to share, inshallah. If there is anything of that kind, please do share, inshallah. Yeah, Marwa's put on a note. Please feel free to ask any questions by typing in to the question box. And so while I'm waiting to see if any questions appear, what I might just do then, inshallah, is I've spoken about the importance of dhikr. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Is that somebody? Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
From what I think Sister Marwa has sent you the questions via WhatsApp. There are a few questions.
Oh, right. Okay, let me have a look on WhatsApp. Okay, right, here they are. Thank you very much. Okay. Is failure to observe self-isolation or quarantine resulting in infecting others? equivalent to killing a soul or killing humanity? That's a really big question, a really, really, really relevant question. Um, Failing to act responsibly is a crime. Um, Allah says in the Quran, "La yukallifullahu nafsan illa wus'aha." Allah doesn't take into account any soul beyond its capacity, which means when you have capacity for a thing, when you now know how potentially damaging something is, you can't choose to flaunt that. It's important that we act responsibly. So people who didn't know about contagion and didn't know that, about the nature of this virus, just a few weeks ago, we weren't on lockdown. Just a month and two ago, literally this wasn't a thing that was people were aware of. But now that we know, we have an obligation, we have an onus, the onus of acting. But is it the same, the equivalent? Not quite, because intention is a really big thing. So there's negligence, and then there's deliberate acts to end a life. Someone who, through their negligence, has caused great harm to another is certainly accountable for that, and is certainly answerable before Allah, and certainly sinful, but not quite at the same level as the person who deliberately ends a life. So while it is I don't want to detract from the importance of respecting, isolation and maintaining social distancing and all of these things, but I wouldn't equate the two. Um, Somebody else has asked, when making dua, should we just ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to do what is best for us, or should we ask specific du'as like, please protect my parents? The Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would make both. A lot of his du'as were very, very comprehensive. So he'd make very comprehensive prayers. And what a beautiful dua, is in the Quran itself. رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. Lord, in this world, grant us good. In the next world, grant us good. And save us, protect us from the punishment of hellfire. But also, uh, there's a very beautiful prayer of the Prophet of Allah ﷺ, where he'd say, Allahumma inni as'aluka fi'l al-khayrat wa tark al-munkarat wa hubb al-masakin. Lord, I ask from you the doing of goodness in all of its various ways of which you know best. I ask you to make me a person devoted to the doing of good. إني أسألك فعل الخيرات وترك المنكرات, and the abandoning of evil and wrong in all its various ways which you know best. I ask you to make me one who abstains from that. وحب المساكين, and I ask of you the love of the poor, that I should love the poor, that the poor should love me. And he said, Allahumma inni as'aluka hubbak wa hubba man yuhibbuk wa hubba amalin yuqarribuni ila hubbik. Oh Allah, I ask you for your love and the love of those that you love, or the love of those that love you, and the love of every act which brings me closer to your love. So these are very beautiful prayers, and you should. And I always urge people. You can get hold of like a very simple dua book, like the Fortress of the Believer is one that a lot of people have, and you may have at home on your bookshelf, and you may be able to download it and keep it on your phone. But get hold of it, and the beauty of anything that comprises largely of Quran based and prayers and prophetic prayers is there is something so beautiful in the words of God and his messenger in teaching us how to turn to God and how to ask. So that's find inspiration in that, inshallah. But saying all of that, do make specific dua. The Prophet, I just said, alayhi salatu wasalam, said, ask your Lord, turn to your Lord with everything that you need, even if it's the strap of your shoe. So do say, oh Allah, my parents, oh Allah, my patients today. Make dua for these things, inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan, and I've had some beautiful prayers for me too. Genuinely though, Allah bless you guys. Your prayers mean a lot. So please do keep us in your dua. How do we reconcile feeling like we're putting our families at risk, i.e., mum and dad, but we're helping others? Sometimes I feel I shouldn't work. Allah bless you. Allah bless you. Listen, the ultimate jihad is that you're having to make sacrifices. And this is why the level of a mujahid in the sight of God is incomparable to anything else. No other, Allah says, those that stay at home and those that pray and fast and those who go to the Masjid al-Haram and spend all their time in tawaf cannot compare to the one. لا يستوي القاعدون من المؤمنين غير أولي الضرر والمجاهدون في سبيل الله. Those who are still at home and doing their thing, and those who are striving in the way of Allah can never be compared. And I say with every confidence, you are mujahideen fi sabilillah when you leave your home, because you're fighting disease, you're fighting sickness, and you're working to save lives. You're fighting a common enemy in order to save lives. You're a mujahid, and you're doing that. And a mujahid places him or herself in harm's way to do that. But yes, of course, you're very anxious about your parents. And so my as tough as this is, as medics what you need to do, and that may be that you come home and you maintain social distancing even from your mum and dad. You make sure that, but you could be um, asymptomatic transmitters, right? You can be shedding without showing any symptoms. And so it's not just about washing your hands and because of the nature of your work, if that means that you're going to have to go some weeks, perhaps even longer, and you're not able to give your mother a kiss, your father a hug, then count the reward for that with Allah. Count the reward for that. But don't expose them to the best that you're able to do that. Maintain a distance. If you live in the same property and you have to come home after doing your shifts, but I wouldn't urge that you leave what you're doing, because the world needs you right now. If you're able to do that, and that's your decision, but if you're able to do that, you have a very high standing in the sight of Allah. So hold on to that, inshallah. Um, So Fasih has asked, oh, sorry, maybe I should have said, but I've had a question here. You've explained beautifully the virtues of being a doctor in terms of preserving the sanctity of life. Would you extend that and say it's an obligation upon doctors to help out at this time? I try to avoid doing fatwa speak, because there are all sorts of variables that have to be taken into account, and it's a very big responsibility to talk about an obligation, a religious obligation, a moral obligation. I think we can all agree. Anyone who is able to, let's put it this way: when the Prophet of Allah ﷺ says things like, anyone who sees wrong among you and he's able to affect change by his hand, let him do so. Of course, the hadith in the first instance is a reference to social wrongs and injustice or haram and things like this. But a wrong is a wrong, and allowing people to die because they can't be treated whilst there are people capable of treating them in society is a wrong. من رأى منكم منكرا فليغيره بيده. So anyone who sees a wrong and is able to make a difference physically, فليغيره بيده, then let him do so. Let him use his hand to make a change. فإن لم يستطع فبلسانه. And if he's not able to make a physical change because that's not what you're able to do, then at least with your tongue. فإن لم يستطع فبقلبه. And if you're not able to speak out and to raise awareness and to call towards the changes that need to happen, and then at the very least let him or her with their heart desire change and be concerned about change. وذلك أضعف الإيمان. And this is the lowest state of faith. So anyone who's capable, saving a life is an obligation. Anyone who's capable, and the scholars have said it's an obligation for you to do what you can to save the lives of others until the point at which your own life is at harm, and then it's no longer an obligation, but it's still an excellence. If you died in the pursuit of saving another life, that's not suicide. That is a noble death, the death of a martyr, because you died in the service of others. You died in trying to save other people's lives. But you have the choice then of saying, I can't do this. You see a child struggling in water. You're not a strong swimmer. Do you choose to dive in and try to save that child? Or do you think, actually, I'm no good at swimming. I'm not really going to be much help to that child. And I'm going to end up, you know, Instead of one person in trouble, there'll be two people in trouble, then others are going to have to help. So maybe what you need to do in that situation is go and call for help. So there's so many variables, so many situations, but morally, yeah, it's an obligation. Um, and but I can't, I'm not going to, inshallah, go into fatwa. Right, I've got a few other questions here on the WhatsApp. Is it possible to get the du'as mentioned in the webinar sent somehow? Inshallah, I'd be very happy to do that. Absolutely. In fact, I have so maybe I can get the guys, inshallah, to send out like a PDF of some collection of adhkar and dua. But yeah, please do, guys. Literally, when you leave your home in the morning, when you get up for Salatul Fajr, when you're walking or driving into work, this is a time that you need to be making dhikr. Literally, the prophets walked with the name of God on their tongues when they were dispatched to face any great challenge. Walk with Allah, go with God. This is what goodbye used to mean. Goodbye. If you look in the dictionary, goodbye is a contraction of God be with ye, and that's why we say go with God, right? God be with you. So people used to walk with God. The Prophet of Allah, whenever he'd see somebody off, one of the things he'd say to him is, Astawdi Allah dinak wa amanatak wa khawatima amalik. I place you in the safekeeping of God. You, your faith, dinak, Astawdi Allah dinak wa amanatak, your trust, the trust that you have that the amana that's been placed in your hands for you to fulfill. I place it safekeeping with Allah. وَخَوَاتِمَ عَمَلِكَ, and the conclusion of all of your good works, all of the work that you do, it's ajr with Allah. Allah keep it safe. So he'd dispatch people and send them. When he himself traveled, one of the prayers he'd say, Allahumma anta sahibu fi safar. Lord, you are the companion that I take with me on this journey of mine. Wal khalifatu fil ahl. And you are the one that I leave behind to look after my family and my loved ones behind me. You're the one that I take with me, and you're the one that I keep for the safekeeping of keep behind for the safekeeping, because God is omnipresent. Jazakumullah khairan. So message to the entire audience from Marwa. Have a look at that if you'd like the dua and things like this to be sent for them. Please email your. Can you send your email address to webinars@britishima.org? Okay. I'm just checking to see if there are any last messages. Oh, we're over time, so we sort of need to stop then. Okay, but I'm last question, and then inshallah. I feel that adequate personal protective equipment is not being provided for me at work. Can I refuse to work in this unprecedented time when every single healthcare professional is important to save lives? Will it not mean that I am putting lives at risk by being selfish? This is such a good question and such a difficult one. And this is one of the reasons that I said that I'm afraid of giving you a fatwa, because your circumstances are unique and there are so many variables. And if a person felt, I'm not protected, and I'm a mother or I'm a father, and then I can't blame you for saying this is not safe, and it needs to be made safe before I can do this to my children. And that's those are things that we have to. And so there are certain things that you have to make dua, you have to turn to your own conscience, and you have to really raise but also think, maybe you can be creative and think about, well, what can you do to make yourself safe? Is there anything, as much as is possible within your means? And even if that means going out and purchasing yourselves, is that a possibility for you to do, if it's not yet being provided for, which it absolutely ought to have been? If it's still not forthcoming from your employers, from the trust, is that something that you're able to do? Can you get hold of? Can BIMA and can the ladies and gents involved in among you here, can you work together and think about working out ways of sourcing protective equipment like this? That's something that I would absolutely urge. And if someone chooses to see a patient despite lack of PPE in some countries, is it a sin or is it a sacrifice? No, that's not a sin. That is a sacrifice. That's exactly as I said in the past. Your intention is not, I'm just going to, be reckless and throw myself into harm's way. Your intention is genuinely, and people's circumstances are so different. If people in Bangladesh or in Pakistan, where cases of corona, the novel coronavirus, are now really taken off, because if all of the medics said, well, until we have adequate equipment, we refuse to treat patients, this problem is only going to get worse, much worse, much more, very very rapidly. And so there are some people who are doing the very best that is within their means. When the Prophet ﷺ tells the companion to tie his camel, then place his trust in God, what he's saying is, do the best that's within your means to do, and then turn to God and say, Ya Allah, I've done the best I can do. You protect me by your grace. And that's something that all of you can do. You can do the best that's within your ability, and then say, Allah, I can't do anymore. I don't have any more, but I want to save your servants. I want to save lives to the best of my ability. You please be my protector. You be my carer. You be the one who preserves me. May Allah Jalla wa ala increase you and bless you with every goodness. I've gone over time. Your time is very precious, and I know that you have a long and hard week ahead of you. And I pray for you guys immensely. And I ask Allah Azza wa Jal to bless you and to count you amongst the. There's a beautiful hadith in Bukhari, about when plague descends. The Prophet of Allah Sallallahu said, the one who stays in the hadith in Bukhari, it says, fi beladi, within his, confined to his town. The same narration in Musnad Ahmad says, fi bayti, confined within his own home. Sabiran, patiently awaiting for Allah's decree, Allah will count, he will be counted amongst the martyrs. Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani points out the hadith doesn't actually say, and then he died. It just says anyone who at the time of like a pandemic, it waits patiently and turns to God and is patient, will have the reward of a martyr. You guys are working actively to try to help people in distress. You will have the reward of a martyr, whether you die in the course of this or not. You don't have to succumb and become martyrs to other people's treatment. You may, inshallah, be blessed with very long lives after this and go on to do other great things. But when death comes to you, as it must to all of us eventually, your death, inshallah, will be the death of a martyr, because you were patient and firm in the face of tribulation. May Allah Azza wa Jal bless you people.